little while back, I checked out two video games that were very much a part of my childhood. In the early 90s, Tiny Toon Adventures was the cartoon to watch, and we had some decent video games to go along with it. The first time I checked out the classic NES title, that was mostly trying to cash in on that Mario 3 formula, and compared it to its Super Nintendo counterpart, Buster Bust Loose. If you haven't seen that episode, the NES game is really good, even if it is just using that Mario 3 formula, but the Super Nintendo version didn't fare as well. But there's a handful of Tiny Toon Adventure video games, so I'm going to check out two more, and I'm going to start with the NES sequel, Trouble in Wacky Land.
This game was released as the direct sequel to the first game, and was released pretty late in the NES life, not making the full rounds until 1994 in Europe, but it was originally released in 1992 in Japan. Instead of being another platformer like the original, you could almost call it a collection of minigames. There is platforming because it's the exact same engine as the first game, and because of this, each section of the game can feel a little weird at times, since it isn't a game engine that was originally designed to create proper minigames. The engine was for a platformer.
So there are 4 areas to play before you get to the final stage, and each one gives you control over a different character. 2 of which don't really do much else but have you remain stationary while dodging a few objects and enemies. And as easy as that sounds, well, it isn't. If it doesn't really sound all that exciting, well, that's because it isn't. So we're going to start from the top right of the map and work our way around.
First, you have the lovely train ride. Your goal, as Hampton, is to walk the train route until you reach the engine. This level really reminds me of the Super Nintendo game, which has its own train level. On top of that, Hampton, like Buster in the SNES game, doesn't jump on enemies, he has his own attack move. Here, Hampton literally throws his weight around, and like the SNES game, it's kind of awkward. The goal is to make it to the end and collect as many points as you can. You can get the end by dodging obstacles and getting points by knocking Roderick Rat and the occasional bat out of the way. Picking up the little cakes also helps. There is a boss at the end, but he isn't an issue. This is probably the least annoying level of the entire game. Next is the log ride with Furball. Here you ride the log and jump over and around obstacles. You have no attack, so you have to dodge the fish, frogs, logs, and birds. You can also collect points by grabbing the fish floating around. This ride is not only annoying, but it's pretty boring. If you're not just standing still, you're trying to dodge some obstacles in this really tight space. Then when you get off the log and ride this lift up and down around the logs and the birds, well, good luck. Now for the roller coaster with Babs Bunny, and I'm going to be completely honest here. I've never gotten very far in this ride, and I hate it. You have 3 options here: jump, duck, or switch the car around. If you at any time touch any wall, you lose a heart. 3 hearts and you lose the round. Your goal is to get to the end and collect the grapes for points. Jumping is probably the worst idea in most situations. Ducking and flipping the car between right side up and upside down usually do the trick, but it isn't as easy as it sounds. It's hard to see when something is too low, and your reaction time is low even if you have fast reflexes. Did I mention that I just really hate this part of the game? Alright, and lastly, we have the bumper cars. This flips between interesting and boring, but it really isn't too frustrating, which gives it major bonus points over the previous 2. As Plucky, you control your bumper car and try to knock the 2 rats into the hole. The court has some bumpers reminiscent of a pinball machine to bounce you and your enemies around to make things interesting, I suppose. The bad thing of this section is that it's pretty clunky. Just driving around is super slow, and if you let go of the D-pad, you stop dead. To really knock the other guys around, you press and hold A to charge your car up and let go to launch. But if they hit you mid-charge, you stop dead and lose the charge. The bumpers are super sensitive, so it's easy to bounce around wildly, which is where the true frustration can set in. But it isn't a bad level. But I guess I can't really call it good either.
So you're probably wondering about getting to the final stage. Well, in the middle of the map is that big castle, but you're only allowed in there after getting 4 gold tickets. You get the 4 gold tickets by playing each of the other stages and completing them. But if you noticed, I've mentioned collecting points a lot. This is because you can collect enough points to buy 50 tickets to get into the final stage. Both options are difficult and tedious.
I guess it's good to have options, but both kinda suck. Either you complete all 4 areas, or you just keep playing all 4 areas until you rack up enough points to get 50 tickets. So you pick one ride and hope you win, but you don't, so you use the points to go to Shirley the Loon and buy more tickets. Then you take those tickets and ride another ride, but don't get enough points to buy more tickets, so you try again, only to waste more tickets in order to get more points to try and buy more tickets so you can try a different ride. It's a stupid concept.
So all that's left is the final stage, so let's get it over with and move on. I bet you can guess how fun this stage is.
So as Buster Bunny, we get to enter the castle and try to find Montana Max. In this level, we are back to that platforming style of the first game, but with 2 big changes. Like Hampton, and like the SNES game I reviewed before, Buster has an attack move. It is once again that flip move, and it's, of course, awkward. I still don't know why they adopted this mechanic for this game and the SNES game. Buster also jumps really oddly. If you hold down the button, Buster jumps really long and has an extended hang time. If you only quickly press it, he just kind of half jumps. This is the best way to ruin a platformer. Screw up the jumping mechanic. The level itself is just a big maze, which as everyone knows is super exciting, especially when you get stuck in a loop of doors. Jump haphazardly through the level, avoid the rats, and get stuck in loops of maze doors. There isn't much else to talk about. It's about as fun as the rest of the game so far.
Yeah, it's a shame that such a well-made game was followed by such a poorly thought out one. I mean, it's good enough, I guess, but I think I would even pick the Super Nintendo game over this one. I could compare it to saying that you really want a pizza. So you finally decide to order a thin crust pepperoni lovers from Pizza Hut. But somewhere down the line, you get a Domino's pizza. Now, you're probably going to eat it because it's a pizza and it probably is a little good. But the whole time, you can't help but think how much you really wanted that thin crust pepperoni lovers. But I got one more game to check out. And on the next episode, we're going to look at Tiny Toon Adventures, Buster's Hidden Treasure for the Sega Genesis. I'll see you next time.